Take two. What does the following three things have in common? I was kidnapped in India, goal setting, rebellion, and boundaries, and the Second Amendment who called me the other night to question a few things because they know I'm a reasonable person. We're going to be talking about what these three things have in common because I think what you see going on today is a radical lack of vision and clarity on one's goals. Man, how can you make that statement? We're going to be talking about that and more in this morning's Spark Show with Grant Sparks. Let's talk about it. Now, before anything, you know that we always start the day with morning cup of gratitude because I got to tell you, a lot of lack of settled hearts out there, a lot of frustration, a lot of goal setting challenges. Quite often, it's the inability to actually even see what's going on around you. And that's part of what we're going to be talking about today is can you actually see where you're at? When you're trying to accomplish big goals, can you see that you're accomplishing those big goals? Let's talk about these three things that have actually occurred to me these three things that have actually happened to me and how they actually correlate or teach us a little bit more about goal setting. You've probably heard me tell the story a few times about how I was kidnapped in India. In the mid 2000s, I was traveling to India and I got into a taxi. There was a lot of different taxis out there. I just waved a taxi down. It was about 2004, 2005. And I got into the taxi and slowly I kept giving the taxi driver directions. But slowly the directions that the taxi driver was given weren't followed. They passed that one museum I asked to go to. And then I asked them to pull over and they stopped. They didn't pull over. Then I asked them and try to have this conversation with them. And this went on. And I started getting more and more and more afraid. Now, I was traveling with a companion and this person was a female and she was starting to get really scared. And so we were in a foreign country, didn't speak the language, and we couldn't really tell, wait, is this the moment you bail? That's my point. When we were in this situation, being kidnapped, for lack of a better term, we could not tell if this was the moment we jumped out of the car and ran away, or is this the moment we actually attacked the driver? It kept escalating. And eventually they pulled over and two friends got into the driver's seat and they kept driving. We kept telling them, go this way. They kept pretending not to understand English. And we kept getting more and more afraid and we kept escalating. This went on, and I'm not kidding. This went on for hours. Do we just trust them? Are we the ugly Americans in being rude as we're traveling? What's going on here? And the panic kept rising. And then I started thinking, well, that's it. I'm committed to jumping. I'm going to jump out of the vehicle and run away. But what about my companion? What do I do about her? And she was freaked out. And she was literally so afraid that she was passing out and waking up and passing out and waking up. And we will try to talk. And the people in the front seat obviously knew we were distressed. My point with this is it's not always clear to know the moment you should bail out of a sticky situation. Jump forward. I got a phone call last night from a person that I know very dearly, and they're a very close friend of mine, and they are a very vocal Second Amendmenter. They really believe in gun rights, and they always have. And when asked in the past about their gun rights, the number one response of why is in case the government gets out of control, in case an authoritarian steps in case these situations. And they called me last night and they said this one sentence. They said, Grant, I said, what? They said, I didn't realize that an authoritarian would actually be telling me what I want to hear and representing my rights. This person said it's getting worse and worse and worse. And as a Second Amendment person, as this person was sharing with me, as a Second Amendment, I feel torn because I feel like I should step up to my rights and responsibilities of defending America. Even if I disagree with other people's opinions, we are meant to defend America against authoritarianism of any shade, even if they're telling us what we want to hear. And this person said, I'm torn because I'm not really sure. Is now the time I take action, or do I let it go because the government is doing a lot of things that I tend to agree with? And I said, that's a very interesting question. What do you think? You were taught that you're supposed to have guns to prevent authoritarians, not authoritarians that disagree with you. And so we had this conversation last night as they were trying to decide on their compass. What's their compass? Similar to me being kidnapped in India, what's my compass? When's the right moment to jump? When's the right moment to bail? This question is asked quite often and asked a different way as it pertains to your goals. When's the right moment to take action for your goals? Is there a perfect moment or is there a better moment? Is there a worse moment? When's the right moment? You see, quite often we lack the conviction, we lack the courage of the things we've said we wanted to do, and we have no conviction to take action. Very rarely, in fact, it's freaky. I think right now, the time that Wildleaf Wanderer decided she was going to buy a property in North Carolina. And this was freaky to her. And this has been freaky to her. And it's been very scary. But she has the courage of her convictions. She took action when she said enough was enough. I meet a lot of people who set a lot of big goals. And those big goals are quite often bigger than they could have imagined, especially when they step up to the plate. And when they're faced with attempting their goals, they back down. Or if they've pursued their goals and they've obtained some of those goals, they don't know if now's the time to celebrate because the work it took and the progress that was there and the progression, this slow progression, they were familiar with every single step and they didn't know if now was the time to celebrate or not. When's the time to celebrate? When is the time to stand up and dance? Or when is the time to take the leap? Whether you're like me in the middle of India being kidnapped and not really sure, is now the time I fight? Is because they're not fighting me. Is now the time to bail out of the car? Because I don't know, I've got this partner, and what if they stay behind? I'm not really sure what to do. But all the time growing up, I always said, if I was ever faced with this sort of situation, I would do X, Y, and Z. Similar to my Second Amendment friend who called me last night. If I was ever faced with this sort of situation, I would step up. But we don't account for all of the situations, and we actually don't hold the convictions we think we have. My Second Amendment friend realized in our conversation last night, their only conviction was to own a gun, not why they wanted to own a gun. They always felt the attack about the justification of them owning their guns was going to come from the left. But they never thought about the fact that the justification for their weapon and what they said they were going to do with it growing up was going to come from the right. They didn't expect that. Similarly to when we have goals, we don't really know when the right moment is to take massive action, to take action for our goals, to live the fulfilled life. And right now, I am meeting a lot of small business owners, and I'm meeting a lot of passionate people who keep sidelining their goals. I am one of them. I've been saying for years that I want to travel internationally every single quarter. And over the weekend, and over the last few weeks, and over the last few months, and hell, over the last few years, I constantly hear myself saying, well, I got to take care of this person and make sure they're okay before I go. And I got to take care of that person and make sure they're okay before I take this leap for my massive goal. Now, I've taken massive leaps for my goals in the area of fitness and health. I've taken massive leaps for my goals in the areas of small business. I've taken massive leaps in other ways. But the bigger things inside of me, a life of art, a life of coaching, a life of travel. And I have traveled and I've lived abroad. And I feel like that's done me well enough. But I think it's well past time for me to make the next leap. But I keep saying the same thing I said in the car when I was being kidnapped. I keep saying the same thing that my Second Amendment friend was saying. And that is maybe now's not the right moment. Maybe I got to see X, Y, and Z happen first before I take action. And I'm here to tell you this morning, as it comes to goal setting, there is no better time than this very moment. There's no better time than this very moment to take action. And I've seen this 9 times out of 10. Let's say, for example, it comes to your fitness goals. That's an easy one to get your head around. It's an easy one to get your head around that as it comes to your fitness and health goals, you should start today. As it comes to the goals of homesteading, you should start today. It's low risk. You put out a raised bed in the yard. I plant another fruit tree. I go to the gym this morning. It's a very low risk. But when it comes to traveling internationally, spending a little bit more money on tickets, being away from my business for just a few too many days that I'm comfortable with, when you're in the uncomfortable zone is probably the indication that it is time for you to take that leap. And the tough thing is that a lot of people are realizing is that they've been signaling. A lot of people out there have been signaling for a long time that they have these big, big goals or they have these big, big convictions. But when faced with that conviction, they realize I either don't have the courage or I don't really mean it. I actually had other motives the whole time. For me to say I want to travel and not actually buy the airline tickets and keep saying I'm waiting until this person in my life is taken care of, because that's noble. It's noble for me to put other people in front of myself. And the truth is I don't really have the courage of my conviction, but I need to have the courage of my conviction. Good morning, Billy Weigel. Let's get after it again this week. You're not kidding. That's Billy Weigel over on Instagram. I hope you're doing fantastic this morning. And so I challenge everyone today to look at the things that you've been signaling to yourself and to your loved ones and to the world that I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. Do you really want that? I've had certain revenue goals in my business that have been in my business. These revenue goals have been in my business. I am not kidding, for 7 years. And it took a close person in my life, a loved one, to say, you're not really motivated on money and you actually don't care about that number and you need to quit putting it out there. You need to find goals and ambitions that do resonate with you. And you do need to have those goals. And you do need to have revenue goals. And you do need to pursue them. But as your top goals, these aren't really a top goal for you, no matter how long you've been saying it. A lot of us have been signaling goals we have no conviction for. And so how are we going to solve this today? How are we going to solve it the way I would have solved it when I was being kidnapped in India 10, 20, actually 20 years ago? What are we going to do? And what's the advice I give to my Second Amendment friend last night? It's to reassess your goals for your conviction and take the leap now if you feel convicted. And if you do not feel convicted, push it out of your brain entirely right now, shelve it, burn it, walk away from it, because you're expelling energy on goals you could be pursuing. So what we're going to talk very briefly about goal setting, then I'll let you get about your day, because this thought has been brewing in me quite clearly, and I really want to tackle it for myself, but also kind of flesh it out for you. So here are a few things I recommend you do. Number one, look at the conviction that's rising up inside of you, like my Second Amendment friend, or like myself with world travel, or like Wildleaf with homesteading. Look at those goals and ask yourself, do I have the courage of my conviction? Will I take action on this today? Today. If you hem and haw, chances are you don't actually have the courage of your conviction. The conviction that rose up in you, again, a kind of heated political example is my Second Amendment friend. They're heated about it, and that's like a heated conversation, and it's like there's so much to consider, but are you going to take action on it today? It's not the elevation of your heart rate. For example, my kidnapping in India. It's not the elevation of my heart rate and my fear and my rationalization that is the compass inside of me. The compass inside of me was my conviction to take action. And I'm either have the courage to do it or not. As it came to my partner in the car, I was either going to attack the driver and defend us, or I wasn't. And it turned out that I wasn't. Now, I did something else and we got away, and it turned out okay. And we ended up negotiating our way out of it. And so I had courage to act a different way, but I always had this machismo. I'm going to attack the person. I'm going to defend myself. Whereas I ended up talking my way out of it, which is a very Grant thing to do. But I had to get it out of my head that I was not going to attack those drivers in order to start thinking of another solution. Similar to my Second Amendment friend. Well, you're either going to decide to take a drastic action, or you're going to put that out of your mind for now and have another course of action. Or like you as a goal setter, if there's a goal that you want to achieve, let's say, for example, traveling international, I either need to quit saying I'm going to travel each quarter and just drop it, or I need to go buy those plane tickets today. I got to take action. If I do not take action, I'm kind of full of shit. And if I'm full of shit, I'm wasting a lot of energy. Now, I present for your consideration this mechanism that I'm talking about is the reason so many of us are not enjoying more joy or not experiencing more joy and happiness. Let's talk about why. Because we do not have clarity, not only on what we say we're going to do, but clarity of our conviction. Do we have conviction and commitment to a course of action? Have we rehearsed what to do? Do we practice how we're going to respond? For example, in the example of me traveling internationally, every quarter, do I wake up and buy my plane tickets on the first of that quarter? Do I have the conviction? Do I block off that time and tell my team, this is the trip I'm taking, let's start preparing for it? This is what I'm going to do. Do I have that courage? Am I going to do it? I need to do this now. Now, if I don't, I need to drop it. I need to quit signaling it because it shows insecurity. There's a scripture that says an unstable mind, a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways. I look around at all the people that have a great degree of unhappiness. And a lot of them do have goals, but they do not have conviction on their goals. They do have goals, but they're not passionately pursuing their goals. And as a result, they're miserable. They're not miserable because they're not pursuing big goals. They're miserable because they said they wanted to pursue goals and they're not pursuing them. They're miserable because they pretended to be something. And when rubber met the road, they were realizing, I'm not that person. Now, misery comes from a lot of sources, but I believe the greatest amount of misery is when you say you're something, but no, you're not. And how do you know the difference? You haven't taken action on it. So I present for your consideration today in this very brief Spark Show. I present for your consideration to take the time to gather up your conviction. And as you write down these goals that you said you were going to do, and if you are faced with that opportunity and are not taking action, I want you to write a big question mark. Do I actually believe this thing? Maybe there's a goal that you said, I believe that I will take action on this thing today. Great. Circle it, put a check mark next to it, put it on your calendar, and take radical action. One thing I do is I take out my 3x5 card every single day and I rewrite them. And the purpose of this is multifold. Number one, I am doing the handwriting, and handwriting is supremely important. I rewrite this thing every day. So I'm signaling to myself, I'm going to do this thing. But the other thing is that I am faced daily with the reality of whether or not I'm actually going to pursue these goals, whether or not I actually have the conviction to pursue this goal. I write it every single day and I go, well, do I still believe that? And I flush out goals that I probably don't believe in much more quickly when I write this out every single day. I write my mantra. I am so happy, grateful, and full of joy. Now that I am what? I am building my coaching and speaking business today by writing out my email program. Now, I've written on that on my card 2 or 3 days in a row. And if I do not act on that today, I have to call bullshit on myself that I don't actually have the courage of my convictions. I'm not prioritizing myself. That I move money for my investments. I did that. That's success. So I have the courage of my convictions. That I write 1,000 words in my next book every single day. I have not done that in nearly years. So I cannot say that I'm a writer until I sit down and write. If I write one day, I can say I'm a writer, and then I write another day, and then I write another day. This is why I write my 3x5 card daily, because I have to look in that mirror, as it were, and ask myself, do I actually have the courage of my convictions? Am I actually this thing, or am I full of shit? And so many of us are full of shit, but we don't want to be, and we don't have to be. We can take action today. And taking action today, you can make yourself an integrated person immediately. You might have gone years, like I have, as a non-writer who claims to be a writer, who wants to be a writer, who daydreams about being a writer. I either need to drop it or need to write 100 words and then 1,000 words today in my book. What book? I've got multiple manuscripts I've started, and I've only finished 7 of them, and only one I'm super proud of. That book right there. Super proud of it. So what can you do if you find out that you do not have the courage of your convictions? I present for your consideration writing them down, whether it's in a 3x5 card like this, whether it's in your journal, and write down your top 5 goals and ask yourself, how long have I been writing this down? Jerry Seinfeld used to have a calendar, and every day he wrote a joke, he put a check mark next to it, and every day he didn't, he put an X through it, and he'd never let himself go more than 1 X. If you have 1 X, if you do 2 X's in a row, you're in red alert. Everything must stop, and you have to, in his case, write a joke. But what about you? What's your goal? Is it to travel international? Is it to write and be a writer? Is it to have mailbox money and be an infopreneur? Is it to build a brick and mortar business of boring businesses? Did you take action today? Your unit is this 16 to 24 hours that you're awake. That is your metric of whether or not you took radical action. So again, today there's a lot going out in the world. There's a lot of political things going out in the world. There's a lot of fear and anxiety, but you can take your control back. You can take your sense of control, your sense of up. There's a scripture out there that says, without vision, the people perish. Another translation says, without vision, the people cast off restraint. There's a lot of people that are acting in misalignment with the values that they've been claiming they have. There's a lot of people acting out there and taking one side or taking another. And what I see the real victim is not only are there very real human victims, but the real victim is their dreams, their goals. They're throwing in for stupid sports games and my team versus your team and my politics versus your politics. Meanwhile, Everyone's dreams are being pushed to the side and goals are being pushed to the side because they don't have an internal locus of control. They don't have an internal compass. And you only have an internal compass by having radically clear goals. That's my message today. Why am I talking about this? Because I see so many of you falling to the wayside from your potential. I see so many of you dropping the ball that you have a massive amount of potential that you are not living up to. I think if you were to get gut level honest, you tell your little journal and whisper to me in a dark corner of a jazz bar somewhere, I'm not living up to my physical, mental, effort, work, health, and fitness potential that I have in my life because I don't have radical clarity, but really, I don't have conviction of my goals. This year is the year of conviction. I've said that the phrase for me this year is go there. I'm going to go there. I'm going to go there with tough conversations. I'm going to go there with my fitness and see how far I can go. I'm going to go there with my business and see how far I can go. I'm going to go there with my travel and see how far I can go. I'm going to go there. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge me. I'm going to challenge my goals and ask myself, am I really this person, or do I just need to give it up? That's my goal. And why I'm talking about this is no matter what you do today, remember the mission: igniting lives of explosive significance.